and welcome to Just Jets episode number 207. What is going on? I am Matt O'Leary. In today's episode, we will be breaking down some Aaron Rodgers teammates that it actually makes sense to add to the New York Jets. We will get into why Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold are both in the news this week and get to your voicemails. Guys, reminder, if you don't know, we announced it last week, but tickets are on sale for the first ever Talkin' Jets draft party. Night one of the NFL draft. Myself, Ryan, and Greenbean will be broadcasting live from the main event in Farmingdale. Make sure to get a ticket. Your ticket includes meal, buffet, Talkin' Jets buffet. We're talking like wings, apps, potato skins, stuff like that. Open bar. Hello, an open bar throughout the first round of the draft. Jet fans hanging out. Ton of raffles. We're doing jersey raffles, ticket raffles, a whole bunch of fun. You don't want to miss out. Get in on the action. TalkinJets.com to get your tickets or scan the QR code that you see on your screen. All right, let's hop into today's episode. We got, first up, Aaron Rodgers teammates that actually make sense for the New York Jets, because last year the New York Jets spent a lot of time and money bringing in former Aaron Rodgers teammates, and it didn't go well. Hand up, fully admit, I should raise my other hand because the topics are blocking it. Hand up, fully admit, I liked Allen Lazard and wanted the Jets to bring in Allen Lazard. I thought he would be a solid 2-3, but that was under the assumption that Corey Davis was going to still be here. And that was before they traded Elijah Moore. So, yeah, I mean, things quickly went south. And then, yeah, it was just tough for Allen Lazard. But Billy Turner, woof. Randall Cobb, woof. Adrian Amos, woof. Tim Boyle, triple woof. Did not go very well at all for most of those guys. And it's off-season time. It's almost free agency time. And there's going to be some names floated around that are former Aaron Rodgers teammates. And I want to talk to you. I have two names that actually make some sense for the New York Jets that are former Aaron Rodgers teammates. Before we get to the two that I think work, there is one that gets talked about constantly, all the time, in fact, and that is David Bakhtiari and Aaron Rodgers. They are close friends. They are very close friends. He was Aaron Rodgers' left tackle for an eternity, pretty much. He was for a very, very long time. David Bakhtiari and Aaron Rodgers linked up together and they played together at a high level. We know how much, you love offensive linemen if you're a quarterback, but I want to pull up the numbers for you. And the biggest reason why the Jets cannot do this. I understand he's a two-time All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowler. He was second-team All-Pro 3 times, first-team All-Pro twice. Here's a problem. Number of games played in the last 4 seasons. 1, 11, 1, 12. He has gotten 5 knee surgeries in the last 3 years. He refuses to play on turf because he thinks that it does a number on his knee, which he may or may not be right about. I would love for the New York Jets to switch to grass, which is something that maybe they do now with the World Cup coming or FIFA. I don't know. I'm not a soccer guy. I'm sorry if I'm just not. I can't get into it. I've tried a couple times, but if that means if soccer brings grass field to MetLife Stadium for good, I will have a newfound respect for that sport. I will find a newfound respect for that sport if that's what happens here. But with David Bakhtiari, man, like, a guy never plays. You can't possibly bring him in. It's the same thing we talked about earlier in the week. If you saw the video with Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith misses 4+ games every single year. The last time he played a full season was 8 years ago. Now with Bakhtiari, he's played 1 game in 2 of the last 3 years. 1 in 2021, 11 in 2022, 1 in 2023. I feel for him. He's probably going to get cut by Green Bay, but I don't know how you could possibly sign him with any hope of him coming in and being your answer at left tackle. He just doesn't play, and I don't think he signs up to come to MetLife Stadium and to play on this turf. I really don't see it. But for the two names that I do think make sense for the New York Jets, one is via trade, one is via free agency. And the one via trade is Davante Adams, which is, you're going to say, oh, of course. Is he actually available? Is the first question that the Jets have to find out because, well, Antonio Pierce is going to be back with the Las Vegas Raiders. We know that Davante Adams is very vocal about wanting him to come back, but who knows? Maybe they want to go a different direction in Vegas. Don't really have a clear-cut answer at quarterback. Who knows what they're going to do? They don't really have a plan. It feels, I mean, I'm sure they have a plan, but it doesn't feel like they do right now. They're kind of stuck in no man's land. So maybe he does end up wanting out. And it's obvious the Jets need a clear-cut number 2 receiver on this roster. They have Garrett Wilson, who's a bona fide number 1. Getting in this case, which would be a 1A and 1B scenario with Davante Adams, because he is still an incredible receiver. Put up 1,100 yards this past year. Is still a great route runner. I know he's getting up there in age, but if you have 2 years of Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers, I think you do it. I don't think it's going to cost as much as what some people are projecting what a Davante Adams trade would cost. You know, it's not 3 years ago when he was first moved anymore. It's, you know, you're trading for a guy who's on the wrong side of 30 now, which I know that scares some for wide receivers because it could absolutely fall off at any time. I get that. But this guy, man, it's just been incredible. 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns last year with Jimmy G and Aiden O'Connell. 2022, 1,514, 1,511 in 21, 1,318 in 2020. 997 in 12 games in 2019, 1,300 in 2018. It's obvious that they have a very, very, very good connection. He's averaged over 67 yards a game every year since 2018, over 60 a game since 2016. That was his first really stellar season, 997 and 12 touchdowns in 2016. You know, it started slow. It took a couple years for Davante. Second round pick from 2014. First couple years in the league, not really playing a whole lot. Randall Cobb was still in his prime in 2014. You had, who led the team in receiving? Yeah, it was Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and then Davante Adams was third. He was third on the pecking order way back when. So it was actually a whole lot of Jordy Nelson still. When did Jordy retire? Sorry, I'm getting in a wormhole here, but you're going to have to bear with me. 2018 was his last year. Where he played with Oakland. Okay. But, man, he had some good years with Aaron Rodgers. Nonetheless, Davante Adams would be a great fit for the New York Jets if he's available for, you know, a third this year. I would strongly consider doing it because he's still that good and it's still that big of a need. They need probably 2 receivers, one through free agency, one via the draft. I'm talking maybe like, I don't know. Adams would be great, but if not a Davante Adams, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, that tier receiver, plus a 4th round pick on a receiver to round out your room, then you'd feel a little bit better about that. At least I would think you'd feel a little bit better about it. The second guy that makes sense, I think anyway, is Jon Runyan, the offensive guard. He is very, very good in pass protection. He's a plus pass blocker. You could probably make an argument that he's not great in the run game or lacking in the run game, but with the state of what the Jets are, they're one of the worst pass protecting offensive lines that I've ever seen. He could play on the left side. He could play on the right side. He's not going to be crazy expensive. You're looking at somewhere between $5 to $7 million per year. He played mostly right guard this year, and I think he's probably someone who would be, you know, well fit on that right side. If you are signing Runyan, then you could do a couple of different things. You could either, if you want to play AVT at guard, cut Laken Tomlinson and have Runyan and AVT be your 2 guards, or keep Laken Tomlinson, sign Jon Runyan, have AVT play tackle, and have the 10th overall pick play the other tackle, and go from there. That would go a long way to helping improve your offensive line. I've said it before, whether it's on the podcast or just other videos on the channel as well. I think that it's important for the New York Jets to take a long look at the guard market, because I don't love a lot of the tackles. I think some of the tackles are a little bit overrated or have some major flaws. And, there's a reason why good tackles don't hit the market very often. It's because teams keep them. They keep their good offensive tackles. It's rare that, a big free agency signing to an offensive lineman or specifically at tackle works, but you see it with guard. And the Jets had a lot of success, when they picked guards in free agency later in their career. Alan Faneca is a great example of it. Hall of Famer. He plays the last 2 years of his career with the Jets in 08 and 09, rides off into the sunset. That was awesome. And if you could get John Runyon for 5 to 7, and I'm not saying John Runyon is Alan Faneca, believe me, but if you could get a serviceable starting guard, and then you're just adding talent, which is something that they desperately need to do because this offensive line stinks. Offensive line is not any good. The second thing that I wanted to get into, the Jets quarterbacks are in the news. Oh no, why are the Jets quarterbacks? And why do I mean multiple quarterbacks? Well, the last two supposed to be saviors of this team, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. Sad story for both of those guys because it appears like, unless something radical happens, that both Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson will be gone after 3 seasons with the team. Sam Darnold showed a lot more in his first 3 years with the Jets than Zach Wilson did. Zach Wilson had better talent, but you could argue maybe worse coaching. I don't know if I'd make that argument, actually, to be honest with you, because you had I don't know. I don't know if I'd make that argument. Moral of the story, it's just so ironic because the biggest thing with Sam Darnold was the Jets saw him as a rookie, come back from injury and play well down the stretch, and said, we're going to give you Adam Gase to get you right. Adam Gase and Dowell Loggins to get this thing going in the right direction. Such a terrible mistake, and that was the beginning of the end. And then with Zach Wilson, it's just for a litany of reasons has not worked out. But why are they in the news? Well, Sam Darnold spoke yesterday to the media. He's the backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And he said, I didn't envision, going to the Super Bowl with the 49ers. I always thought I was going to make the Super Bowl with the Jets. And that hurt. It really did. Because when he was drafted, 3rd overall, I remember how excited I was. He was supposed to be the number 1 pick in that draft. The Browns go with Baker. The Giants take Saquon, and Sam Darnold falls in your lap. And I'm going, yes, okay, the Jets got their guy, great. And then year 1 showed some flashes. Year 2, Adam Gase, mono, still played okay in some games down the stretch. Year 3, disaster. Just an absolute disaster. The Jets decide to move on, which I know a lot of people playing revisionist history nowadays, saying, oh, they should have kept Sam Darnold. And there were some that who were saying it still then at the time. But even though it didn't work out with Zach Wilson, and we'll get to Zach in a second, I still think the Jets made the right decision. The result was the wrong one. Because as we see in today's NFL, you need to have a quarterback in order to be successful. And Sam was a major question mark through 3 years, even though the ones who wanted to keep him were saying like, well, you could he's fixable, he's salvageable. And it turns out that he wasn't. And I get it. You could have Penei Sewell or insert whatever other, player from that draft class. And it stinks seeing that. But I want my general manager to be aggressive at the most important position in the sport, which is quarterback. And the Jets were thinking that we're not going to pick up, we're not going to pick this high again. At least that was the thought process at the time. Let's reset the rookie quarterback contract, which is the most valuable thing in all sports, and take a swing at the quarterback position in what was supposed to be a very deep quarterback class. It didn't work out that way, as we know. Trevor Lawrence has been really the only good one from the class, and he's even underwhelmed to what the expectation was. But Zach was probably going to be on a new team. Trey Lance was already traded. Mac Jones is going to be gone from New England, or not a starter there. And Justin Fields is likely getting traded in the next month or so anyways, too. So not great. But Zach Wilson's in the news for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Rich Cimini article that came out yesterday discussing his value in the trade market was about what I expected. Most thought 6th round pick late day 3. If it's straight up, maybe you get a pick swap. I liked the idea of an incentive trade that is actual draft assets in 2025, not 2024. The Best Western quote from this anonymous scout was a real tough one. It was really tough. I know someone else said you'd be lucky if you get a 7th round pick for them. It's sad that it's the case. And Steve Young, which was the second part of him being in the news, picked out the Los Angeles Rams as the perfect fit for Zach Wilson. And I hear where McVay would make sense and sitting behind Stafford, who I really think, Zach Wilson's comp, my favorite, because he was comped to a million different quarterbacks coming out. Like a Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, which would have been amazing. But I thought the most appropriate comp for him at the time was stylistically Matthew Stafford. The arm angles, similar height, similar build. Could use his legs earlier in his career, not so much now. And clearly, again, it hasn't worked out that way. But I really liked that comp. Love Sean McVay, can sit. But there's one key piece missing. The offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams is Mike LaFleur. Why would Mike LaFleur, who spent his first 2 years as an offensive coordinator with the New York Jets and with Zach Wilson, and it didn't work, and every other quarterback was putting up numbers except for Zach Wilson. You had Mike White put up some numbers. You had Joe Flacco in limited sample sizes put up numbers. You had, who else? Josh Johnson put up some numbers, right? Like, not that they won a ton of games, but they were able to move the ball a little bit better, which was odd. Very strange. Very odd, very strange. But why would he sign up for Zach Wilson again? He just left him. It wasn't working out. They didn't get along, was the rumor. They want to go back together? He wants to work on Zach Wilson and fix him now? I don't see that being a realistic thing. But I do think that Zach Wilson does get traded. And I had someone in my comments or on my mentions being like, the Jets telegraphing that they were going to move on from Zach Wilson's the reason why is, they're not going to get much for him in a trade. Really? For the audio only listeners, I apologize. I just gave a look into the camera. Are you serious look? Because I would think the biggest reason, not the only, but probably the biggest reason the Jets are going to get fairly poor compensation for Zach Wilson is because he didn't play well. He did not play well. And I know the pushback that's going to come. I get it. It wasn't all his fault. I know. But at the end of the day, the numbers are what the numbers are. He ranks towards the bottom of the league over the last 3 years in almost every statistical category for quarterbacks. It's just the reality. Does he have talent? Yes. There's no question that his arm talent is there. He shows it in flashes. Consistency. He is never, ever able to put it together consistently. And that is his biggest problem. And maybe he can go somewhere else, and maybe he can get his career back on track. I don't think that happens. I don't. Sam has kind of settled into, backup level quarterback. I bet he hangs around the league a little bit. I don't think he ever really gets a full-time starting job, but I think, Sam could be a backup in the league a little bit. Zach, I don't know how much longer he lasts, man. I don't know. We'll see if these things change. Let's get to the voicemail portion of the program. Excited to get into the voicemails. We're going to start with Peter from the beautiful Hudson Valley in New York.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley, calling maybe a little late on Tuesday, but trying to give you some extra content for this week on the Just Jets podcast. Calling in just about current Jets, free agents, or players on the roster to see your opinion on who stays and who goes. This will be part of like a 3-part series of calls I'm going to do. Second one being about free agents, and the third one being about drafted players like offensive linemen and wide receivers and such. But looking at the Jets roster and who's a free agent currently, and giving it the old injury status, 75% or greater being probable, 50% being questionable, doubtful, 25% or less. Let me know your opinion on a few of these players. I think we can all agree that we want Orsted, Zerline, Justin Hardy, Chuck Clark. We'd obviously like to get Bryce Huff back. That might not happen. Quentin Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, probably all those guys would be in the 75% or greater category. Ashton Davis, if I didn't mention him already. And then there's a lot of players that fall under doubtful, for sure. Jordan Whitehead, Randall Cobb, Billy Turner, Carl Wilson, Dwayne Brown, probably Mekhi Becton too, and Al Woods, considering his injury, would all probably fall on the lower end of that category and coming back. But do you think they would bring back Connor McGovern? I'd give it a 50-50 chance.
I agree.
Do you think they would bring back Bryce Hall? I also give him a 50-50 chance. I mean, you never know. Sometimes you need that extra back at the corner, considering they don't keep a lot of those guys on the roster. And then there's a few cut candidates, Laken Tomlinson, C.J. Uzomah being the chief among them. And your thoughts on those guys? Besides cutting them, do you think they could be traded and flipped for picks on day 3 this year or maybe even next year? I'd give both of those guys probably 75% or greater chance of either being cut or traded.
Yep.
So let me know your thoughts on all that. Hopefully it makes this week's show. And as always, go Jets.
So you called after I recorded last week, but it wasn't necessarily a topical one where it's like it has to be played right away. So I wanted to hold it because it was a very good question. So Peter, we got it in there. You bring up a bunch of names. I agree with all the ones that you said were likely to stay and likely not to. The coin flip ones are pretty interesting. I would say more likely that Connor McGovern is back than Bryce Hall between the two. I liked that they decided to run it back with him last year on a veteran cheap deal. I don't think he's going to have a crazy market, especially after getting hurt. I don't want him to be a starter. I'm not signing him to be a starter like how he, began the season this past year in 2023. But can he be your backup and be a higher quality backup with Wes Schweitzer as your two main backup guys on the interior? I think that's pretty solid. We've seen a lot worse from the Jets in their reserves, and I think those are two quality, not in terms where you're like, oh my God, they got to get in, they got to start quality, but if you're in a pinch and you got to play one of them for 2 games, you could survive that way. You could survive if they have to come in and play. And that's how I look at Connor McGovern. I don't think he's a high caliber starter anymore, but I think he would be a high end or a solid backup. Bryce Hall, I just don't think this Jets regime is very high on him. I was excited when the Jets drafted him in 2020 in the 4th or 5th round. And the reason for that excitement was because he was someone who could have gone a lot higher, but due to injury fell. And I was like, all right, this is someone who is like a second, that's a second round talent getting that the Jets got on day 3. I think this kid can play. And it took him a little bit, but in 2020 as a rookie, he made some plays. He looked solid. 2021 as started most of that year. I thought he was okay. It was him and Eccles, so that was on a really, really bad defense, as we know. 2021 defense was atrocious. They signed DJ Reed. They draft Sauce Gardner, and way down the pecking order goes Bryce Hall. And let's be honest, when in the limited times that he's played the last 2 years, hasn't been phenomenal. I just don't think Saleh and this staff likes him the same way that the old regime did. I just don't. So I think he's gone. Mekhi, I think, is gone. Now, the last two that you mentioned was CJ and Laken Tomlinson. I really like the idea of trading those guys for late day, and we're talking late day 3, like 6th, 7th round darts. But you could package those darts for, picks next year for whatever. It's a creative way of doing it. I think CJ Uzomah is all but guaranteed to be gone. I would say like 98% chance he is not on the roster. Laken, I'm more up in the air on. I would say like 55-45 that he's gone. The only reason why I'm like apprehensive or a little shaky on it is because I think the Jets are going to believe, not necessarily that I believe it, but I think in the Jets' eyes, they're going to go, we think that he can get back to being an average player with improved play on the left-hand side and with stability at center, whether it's Joe Tippmann or someone else. And we don't want to cut him because changing out 3 pieces on the offensive line instead of 2, that's significantly harder to replace 3 things on the line and instead of 2. I don't know if I go with that logic. I'd say probably not. That's not my favorite route to go. I would move on from him, but I think there's a chance that he's back with the New York Jets. Not a huge chance, but a chance nonetheless. Let's go to PG up next from Long Island. He wants to react to the Athletic article.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. So when they hired Robert Saleh, I was thrilled. I think he has a great story. He was working in the financial industry. His brother survived 9/11, attack on the World Trade Center. And he reevaluated his own life and said, I want to be a football coach. Put in the work, started low-level college, ended up going into the pros, obviously ended up as defensive coordinator of the 49ers, did a good job, and became the head coach of the Jets. But now, you look at this article from The Athletic, and you see, and I said it before, he's in over his head. I mean, allowing the offensive coordinator when they had the worst offense in the history of the Jets, not even looking at enough film, not listening to his coordinators, complaining about the coverage that the crosstown Giants get, threatening to take the cell phones from his coaches. I mean, come on. Really, he should change his motto to all gas bag, no clue. All gas bag, no clue. I mean, it goes back to what, again, I said earlier, a year from now, we're probably at the same date going to be talking about the new head coach that we just hired.
I hope
maybe
not,
the new GM. I don't know. Hopefully Douglas has a good off season. He's been up and down, mostly down lately, but really, unfortunately, I just don't see Saleh working out, and now it's kind of obvious why. All gas bag, no clue. Anyway, I'm sure you've talked about it, but I want to get your thoughts on the Athletic article, and maybe we can have Aaron Rodgers come in and save the day and prove us all wrong and make a run in the playoffs. But I don't know. Anyway, as always, go Jets.
Thank you, PG. Much appreciated. Yeah, the Athletic story was a tough one. Didn't put this staff in a good light. Not all that crazy surprising, though, because it felt like the Jets, Robert Saleh, and Joe Douglas, by the way, too. He gets thrown in this as well. They operated like they knew they were going to come back no matter what. And Saleh making excuses, he did it behind closed doors. He did it on the podium. He always had an answer for everything why it wasn't working. Sometimes it's got to be, we're not good enough. And that's okay. But the excuse is this guy's hurt, and they blamed it all on the injuries. And I know 4 plays into your season, losing Aaron Rodgers takes away the ceiling of all ceilings. But we saw what just even any other not even average, below average quarterback play can do for you. Joe Flacco got the Browns to the playoffs. Gardner Minshew had the Colts within a couple plays of the playoffs. It's insane. It's absolutely insane that was the case. These other teams, come away with a really bad injury to their quarterback, and they're still competitive down the stretch. Bengals were still competitive after losing Burrow. The Vikings were for a moment after losing Kirk, and then that kind of fizzled out. There were examples of quarterbacks going down where it wasn't all, well, we tried to give it a run next year. I didn't like it. I really didn't. The only pushback, it's not really pushback on you specifically, but just that article in general, was that it was very focused on the head coach. And I think it had, to me, seemed like it was coming from the front office. I think that was a front office leak to make ourselves look better. That was just my biggest takeaway from it. We're going to close out with Devin from Nevada. I'm sure it's a busy week for Devin. Let's hear him.
What's up, Matt? Devin from Nevada calling in. Over the weekend, Woody Johnson sent me a DM on Twitter asking me to make a phone call on Matt O'Leary's podcast. So here I go, I guess. Yeah, I want to touch on a few things. So first, I know we've talked about the athletic report quite a bit. Not really too shocked by the things in there, but somebody who I feel for in all of this is Woody Johnson. In my opinion, Woody's done everything right. As an owner, all you can really ask for is, hire a good GM, let him do the work, and supply the money to acquire talent. And, he's done exactly that. JD came from the Eagles, who at the time were red hot, and it was a really good hire in retrospect, but maybe not now. But that's not his fault. And, if he's out here reading tweets, yeah, that's weird. But, the best organizations start with an owner who genuinely wants to win. And I think Woody does. He does want to win. So, his heart's in the right place. And the way everything's blown up on him, blown up in his face, I feel for the guy. And I actually think he's done a really good job as an owner recently. Next thing is how Jets fans live in our own hell within the NFL universe, and no one has it like us. Just a couple weeks ago, seeing Ty Johnson and Dalvin Cook get playoff snaps, even Braden Mann getting one snap in a playoff game is jarring. Bro, I'll never recover from that. It's like you can't make this stuff up. It's almost February. The season ended 4 weeks ago, and it's still LOL Jets. Like, man, just let me enjoy a random Tuesday, please. Lastly, I don't hear enough people talking about is worst case scenario for the Jets next year. And to me, worst case scenario isn't that, we're terrible, we go 1-16, whatever. But it's, let's say, the Jets go 9-8 next year, squeak into the playoffs and lose in the wild card. Do we keep Salah? You know what I mean? Let's say Jets win that wild card game and lose in the divisional. Do we keep him? It almost feels like it's Super Bowl or bust. And if that's the case, why are we keeping this guy? At least there's good coaches out there for next year, but I hope the stink finally washes off so good coaches want to come here. Instead of like turning down offers and stuff like they have in the past, it seems like. But would love to hear your opinion on everything I mentioned, brother. So for now, let's mutually agree to part ways. Like every person the Jets have ever let go of ever. Nobody ever just leaves. We never fire anybody. We just mutually agree to part ways.
Oh, yeah.
Better pastures, greener pastures, things like that. Anyways, man, take care, brother. Go Jets.
Thank you. I appreciate it, my friend. That just incredible because you're right. And I would love to just be like, all right, Mike Vrabel's still available. We're just going to swap it out. I don't think it's that easy, unfortunately. My pushback on you, though, for Woody would be this. There's no doubt in my mind that you're right, that he wants to win. I do. The best owners know when to get out of the way. And Woody could not be any less self-aware in that spot. That is Woody's biggest problem, is how involved he is. One, with checking and reporting back to Robert Saleh on things that the media and fans are saying. But that's the least surprising thing, that Woody cares so much about what people are saying about his organization and his team. He does. He cares so much about that, to a fault. But then in that article specifically, that wasn't the only thing that was jarring. Something that the Jets did or had to do was when they were transitioning and playing Izzy Abanikanda and Jeremy Rucker and Gibson and Brownlee over the Uzamas and the Randall Cobbs and those guys, they had to go and tell Woody Johnson that. It's like Woody has the last say on even personnel decisions. Woody, that's not, he doesn't need to know that. Woody, if he really cared about winning, which I think he does, but if he was smart and cared about winning, he would hire a football guy to run the football operations and stay the hell out of the way. Stay out of the way. That is his biggest problem. He does not know when to get out of the way. And he makes things messy, gets too many people involved, and it doesn't end well. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Just Jets. I appreciate it. Wherever you get the program, whether it's on YouTube or in audio form, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, comment, like, share with a friend. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.